anger is a motivating emotion. A boundary is violated, a need is unmet, an injustice is happening. This should produce anger. Anger is the correct and healthy response to when things aren't going well. It motivates people to see it and to act. The other part of anger, which we often hear and sort of like self-gaslight about, is, oh, it's a secondary emotion. It sometimes is. Sometimes it's easier to feel anger than shame, grief, sadness, many other things. And that can be true. So sometimes we just, there's an anger stage of grief for a reason. You got to go through it. And it can be mixed up with other stuff. So it makes sense to say, if I'm feeling angry, what is the information there? What core needs are not being met? Is there boundary violation? Resentment? If you're feeling resentment, what a beautiful signal of information that your boundaries have been violated. And it's now your job to go figure out what those are. And also to say, what else might be under this? It doesn't mean the anger isn't real. It just means that there might be something else under it.
Welcome to Hopeful and Wholesome, the show where ambitious women come home to their bodies. I'm your host, Hope Pedraza, and I'm a functional practitioner, human design guide, and expert on all things energy, and your partner in decoding the language of your body. This is your space to reconnect with your body's wisdom, reclaim your energy, and rise into alignment in your health, your business, and your life. Because thriving isn't about pushing harder, it's about learning to listen deeper. So let's dive in, because your next breakthrough starts right now. Hey friends, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Kim Paull, and Kim is a burnout recovery and resilience coach who helps high-achieving women and teams recover from burnout and build sustainable, meaning-fueled success. A former health equity and racial justice data leader, Kim discovered her calling after experiencing her own profound burnout during the COVID-19 response while parenting twins. As a queer twin mom with neurodiverse parenting experience and a recovering powerlifter, Kim brings both personal lived experience and professional expertise to her work. She's the creator of The Quitters Club, a blog, and she uses evidence-backed practices including neuroscience, somatic science, and trauma-informed approaches to help clients move from overwhelm to flourishing. She's passionate about helping people recognize that burnout isn't failure, it's just information, and that recovery is possible at any stage. And today we're having a totally different conversation around burnout, because I want to talk about a specific emotion that Kim talks about, and it's anger. And while you may not want to listen to a whole episode about anger, I promise you that this is going to provide so many insights for you, because we're talking about anger and talking about it as the misunderstood emotion for high achievers and how it shows up, why it shows up, how we often mask it or misinterpret it, or we can't seem to identify it. It's just such a unique conversation. And I love this conversation with Kim because I think so many of us experience this and we don't allow ourselves to experience, and how we as women are socialized to really suppress and repress anger versus express it, and what that is actually doing to our body, to our hormones, to our health, to our gut health. And really how healthy anger expressions allow us to free ourselves and allow us to find freedom and creativity on the other side. And it doesn't require a rage room, while that's also a good thing, a good tool to have, but that's not what this is about. I want you to understand your emotions. And that's really what this conversation is about, and what I want you to get out of this conversation, because Kim is going to provide some insights on how you can really understand yourself, understand your emotions, and how to express them and use them in a powerful way. This is such a great conversation. So let's jump in.
Great. Hi, Hope.
Hi, Kim. I'm so excited to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm pumped.
Me too. Me too. And you are such a wealth of knowledge in so many things. I mean, I know that burnout recovery is kind of your forte, burnout recovery resilience, which I love. And we talk about that a lot in so many different ways, different capacities on the show. And what I wanted to start today is something I find so interesting that we've talked a few times before recording about this, and I find it so fascinating. And as many emotions as we talk about on this show, we talk a lot on the emotional spectrum. It's an important thing to talk about. Anger is not one that we have really talked about. And I love your perspective on this. So I would love to start there and kind of unpacking. I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. Unpacking this emotion of anger and just how this is such a misunderstood emotion.
It so is. Thank you for having me on. I'm so pumped for this and just be able to speak to your audience because I think there's just a ton of overlap in folks who are interested in the science and the holistic wellness that you're offering and some of the like practical tips I offer for folks who have just, oof, they're over that curve and they are not feeling good. They are approaching burnout or just a sense of like overwhelming exhaustion that doesn't go away with a weekend off or even like a vacation. It's there. And it's different. It's burnout. And anger really plays into this because often the way we treat anger can tell us a lot about how our energy system is being used, how our energy is getting expressed, and how it's leaking out. And so often when I'm working with folks who are either approaching burnout or have been there and don't want to be there again, they're in it. There are struggles with anger expression, holding anger, noticing it, the stories about anger. And what we try to do through the experience that I lead people through, we do a lot of things, but anger really comes up often because there's usually some just really challenging relationship to it, whether it's stories from your past about what anger is, who you become when you're angry, what anger means. We try to demystify it and just say, just like any other emotion, and actually just like any other physical symptom, it's just information. It's morally neutral, just like your feelings of joy are morally neutral. They just arise. We don't really have control over our emotions. We do have control over our expression of those emotions. And so I help people listen to what does anger look like when it comes into your body? What's the information it's trying to give you? Rather than, oh my God, I'm feeling anger and I got to get it away. Or I'm feeling anger and I got to fire hose it out at somebody so it's not in me anymore. Or I don't feel anger, really, because it's just there. So those three examples are what I call the expression is the fire hose. Like you're expressing anger, like, I don't want it, so you're going to have it. Then there is suppression of, I feel anger and I don't want to feel it, so I'm going to consciously suppress. And then there's the repression, the like, I don't even notice it. And this was me. So I know how to talk about this one. For a long time, I was like, anger never met her. And then realized, oh gosh, I have been subconsciously pushing this down for so long, and it's having some real physical and emotional effects. But like the physical stuff that I think probably a lot of your audience might recognize, I know, stomach issues, IBS, just digestion issues, muscle aches, tension in the jaw, just really throughout your body, suppressed, repressed, and expressed anger. I mean, you might think you are the Pollyanna and like you are not that fire hose over there, but this is coming from the same place of lack of just trust and being able to tolerate a big feeling. And when we're able to have the just trust in ourselves that we can let a big feeling come on and come through, like emotions are meant to move through, a whole world of peace opens up on the other side. And one thing that I really, really help clients understand and move through is, yes, emotions are morally neutral, even though we'll talk about this. We have a lot of stories around that. But being able to sort of like build burnout resilience into your life doesn't mean you are going to be a peaceful Zen priest all the time. Life is going to life. Like you're going to go up and down. Things are going to happen. The goal is to have agility, to be able to say like, I welcome this emotion. Not like, ugh, I have to feel anger now, but like, welcome. What information do you have? And then let it move through you. And we'll talk about what that looks like. And then be able to come back to a baseline. That's agility. That's the goal. It's not just like you're at zero all the time. Like you're going to move up and down. The goal is to be able to move up and down and really control that coming down to where you want to be in your green zone. And the sort of the final wrap up of this segment, this opening segment, is something that I heard that I really have internalized from a coach that I admire, Joe Hudson. He says, joy is the matriarch of all emotions. She will not come into a house where her children aren't welcome. And that means anger too. That means shame. That means rage. That means all the things that we don't like. We not only have to tolerate them, we have to welcome them if we want to feel true joy on the other side.
I love that. It's not going to come to a house that's not welcome. That's so good. And I feel like this one, which we really don't talk about a lot, is it especially hits for women because heaven forbid you be an angry woman. Like I think, there's so much around women showing emotions and are like being too emotional, quote unquote. And I feel like anger is one of those that women can really get penalized for. And, we play into that. There's like kind of, the good girl archetype that all of us, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us are raised in. You have this good girl syndrome, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like that plays into it because if you grow up in a certain way and you grow up in I feel like conventional society, I feel like that plays a role at some point or another. Like just be nice and be quiet and be sweet. And like, that's what girls are taught to do. And so anger doesn't feel like a safe emotion or like a quote, good emotion, right? Which in the episode that just came out, well, by the time this goes out, it would have been a while back, but we had an episode talking about emotions. There's not good or bad emotions, just comfortable or uncomfortable, but it's a really uncomfortable emotion to be in because we're programmed as like, no, just be nice and be quiet and be kind and be nice. And, blah, blah, blah. And so it doesn't feel safe to feel that. So of course we're suppressing it. Or like you said, it's like you find the target and you're like a dragon with the fire breathing out and you're like, you don't know how to deal with it.
You don't know how to deal with it. I know. And especially for women, I'm really glad you brought that up because there's been studies done of men who express their anger, healthily or not, are seen as more professional, more effective,
and powerful.
More
yeah. It's like a power move.
And women who do the same thing are seen as less professional, less effective, same behaviors.
100%.
And so we've got these stories, right? There's nothing wrong with anger, but we have attached meaning and morality to anger because the expressions of anger can go so wrong so fast. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, like there's the story of if I'm a woman, I'm angry, I am aggressive, I am emotional, I'm out of control, or I'm unwomanly, I'm unmotherly, I'm unkind. As opposed to the information that anger is sending us is something's wrong here. And that can be one of two big things. We sort of divide anger into two big categories. One is your core anger this is the function of anger. Anger is a motivating emotion. A boundary is violated, a need is unmet, an injustice is happening. This should produce anger. Anger is the correct and healthy response to when things aren't going well. It motivates people to see it and to act. The other part of anger, which we often hear and sort of like self-gaslight about is, it's a secondary emotion. It sometimes is. Sometimes it's easier to feel anger than shame, grief, sadness, many other things. And that can be true. So sometimes we just, there's an anger stage of grief for a reason. You got to go through it. And it can be mixed up with other stuff. So it makes sense to say, if I'm feeling angry, what is the information there? What core needs are not being met? Is there boundary violation? Resentment? If you're feeling resentment, what a beautiful signal of information that your boundaries have been violated. And it's now your job to go figure out what those are. And also to say, what else might be under this? It doesn't mean the anger isn't real. It just means that there might be something else under it. And then to be able to say, and we can talk about this, but like, what do you do now with that information? And with like, there is a very uncomfortable, as you've said, physical expression and feeling of anger. How do you not just shove that down so it leaks out in other ways and just burns you out? Can lead to depression if it just doesn't get processed. How do you healthily process that without becoming a fire hose at somebody, without snapping at your kids, without like wanting to punch your spouse in the face? How do you do that well? And we can talk a little bit about that. But that's the big idea. Core and sort of just like cover.
Yeah.
Both valid.
Hey, y'all, we'll get right back to the episode. But first, let me ask you this. You've built a vision that others admire. And you've built something that you're really proud of. But behind the scenes, your body feels like it's lagging behind. It just can't quite catch up to your brilliance and your mission that you have. That late night second wind, the foggy mornings, the hormone shifts, the endless push and forcing. You can't strategize your way out of that. And you already know you don't need more supplements. You don't need another supplement stack. You also don't need another side hustle disguised as self-care because nobody wants to have their health as a side hustle. This is about recalibrating your entire ecosystem. And that's why I created the Quantum Reset, a premium 3-month high-touch healing experience for visionary women who are ready to feel as powerful in their bodies as they do in their business. Inside, we decode your nervous system, your minerals, your hormones. We read your labs like the sacred text that it is, so we have actual answers. And then we pair that with deep energetic recalibration, subconscious release. We use gene keys, we use human design, and true embodied healing. This isn't about fixing burnout, because that's not what we're doing here. This is about becoming the woman whose body is powerful, whose body is completely electric, whose energy, clarity, radiance finally matches the size of her mission. If you know your success isn't meant to cost you your vitality and you're ready for a science-backed, spirit-led reset, then the Quantum Reset is your invitation. So check the link in the show notes or send me a message on Instagram, and let's bring your body back online with your brilliance. Now, let's get back to the show. I'm glad you brought that. I was going to go there next, and then you ended up bringing it up about it being a secondary emotion, because I was going to ask your opinion on that, because I've read in a lot of books and I hear people talk about that all the time, that, anger is repressed grief or fear, right? And that comes out as anger, which is true. But as you're saying, like, it doesn't have to be a secondary emotion. Anger can also just be anger.
It can just be a sign that something isn't right. And that can be both. It can be sort of like the core experience of a need unmet, a boundary violated, an injustice happening. And also the immense, like, maybe there's disappointment in that. Like, why didn't they know? How could they do that? Did that really just happen? And it comes out as anger. When I coach folks, what we often find out in about the second or third session is there's usually some complex, compound, ambiguous grief happening that hasn't yet been addressed. And what I look for are signs of anger expression, suppression, or repression to clue me into what might that be, what purpose might that be serving, what might be under it. And often there's a divorce, a loss of a best friend, a death in the family, an identity change, I thought life was going to be this, and actually it's this, and I hate it, but I haven't said that. And that kind of ambiguous, complex, compound grief of I don't even know what I'm grieving anymore. When it's that confusing, your body can often make sense of it only through snappiness, aggression, bitterness, resentment, disappointment, rage. And having a safe space to work through that, identify it, and let it out is invaluable and rare. And so that's one of the things we often do in coaching. It is an unexpected part of burnout recovery and resilience for a lot of people.
Yeah. So you mentioned just then the signs of suppression and repression. So, and I'm assuming what you're meaning is signs like, like signs of you yourself are feeling that, whether it's like physical, emotional. Can you tell us what some of those signs are? Because here's the other thing. I think that now a lot of women listening are very self-aware and very emotionally intelligent. And I think a lot of times we can identify emotions, but sometimes, to your point, what you were just explaining, these things are so compounded sometimes that it's hard to identify them, or it's like layers. So what are some of the signs that you're talking about to help us kind of recognize, oh, wait, this is here?
Oh, for sure. So if we think about these three things, suppression, repression, and expression, and again, I get this confused too, so I imagine your audience might. Suppression is the one where you're consciously deciding, I don't want this feeling. And repression is the I don't even have anger. I'm not sure what you're talking about. It's subconscious. For expression, the ones where it's just sort of the fire hose. I'll hear people say things like, I don't even recognize myself when I get angry anymore. I'm like, who am I? I just yelled at my kids. I just snapped at my kids. My kids are crying because I feel like a volcano. I go from fine to, so that's a sense of I can't even control it. I don't know who I am. It just comes out. And truly in those moments, you've flipped your lid. You're in your amygdala, you're in your fight or flight. You aren't you. And that's okay. That's just more information about your body is overwhelmed and this is how it's coming out. On the suppression side, which is the conscious decision to not this, resentment. So I hear a lot when I hear things about resentment of wouldn't it be nice if I had that thing that they had? Or I'm really pissed. I'm jealous that they get to do that. Those are great signs that you might have some suppressed anger that you are consciously putting down. Or I don't want to be, I'm sort of through gritted teeth of I have a lot to say about that. Or I don't want to be mean, but blah, 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 blah. Not for nothing, but blah, 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 blah. You're like, oh, it's for something. And then on the repression side, this is people pleasing, codependence, conflict avoidance. In a perfectionism sometimes can be either suppression or expression. I mean, there's not firm categories. People move all through them depending on the time of day. But generally people are in one of the three most often. That repression one, sometimes it just is what it is. This is your personality. I find a lot of the times when I'm working with somebody who suffers from a repression style and then the physical consequences of that too, there's usually some trauma in the background. Usually there's a parent who couldn't tolerate their emotions and didn't want nobody wanted emotions. Only one person can have emotions. You had to keep some, a lot of parentification. That kind of, because it's so early. When you are repressing to the point of you don't even know you're doing it in anger, that's usually started pretty early. It's usually a coping survival skill that you learned 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there.
And
I just lost your audio. Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. It that was weird. Yeah. That makes sense. And it makes sense of, all those categories make sense. When we're looking at this as kind of a part of the burnout equation, and I know this is kind of a I mean, I know you could go probably a million different directions with this question, but just maybe generally speaking, what do you find are some of the main causes of the anger that we feel during burnout? Because, and this is the reason I thought this was such an interesting topic, because I feel like when we think about burnout, anger is not typically an emotion we think of. With burnout, it's, we're thinking maybe sadness, maybe anxiety, maybe depression. Like we think about some of these other things, but I just feel like anger is not typically one we think of first and foremost. So I would love to hear what you see are some of the main causes of the anger that can be carried in this burnout situation.
Yeah, it's such a great point. We don't often think about anger as being part of burnout because we think of burnout as a just like flopped depressive state of just like, I got nothing. I'm in total dorsal vagal shutdown, from a just nervous system perspective. You're in a depressive state. And that can be true. When a body experiences something as powerful as anger, I mean, think of it as like if there is a manifestation called expression that's a fire hose and you don't put it out there and it's just living in you, oh my God. The energy it takes to keep that inside, make it make sense, make it nice, live in the body and not express it, not like put it out in a healthy way, takes an enormous amount of energy, and it takes an enormous amount of storytelling to yourself and often living outside of who you know yourself to be. And that difference, that like, wait, I want to be doing this thing, but I have to do this because society tells me or my culture tells me or socialization tells me. That is effort. That is effort that we don't recognize. That is energy we're spending that never gets a name. And so what happens over time is we're doing things as if we tell everybody and everybody thinks we're going on a nice leisurely stroll in the woods. But in reality, we are that duck under the water paddling, and nobody can see, even us. Of course, you're going to be like, man, I'm tired and I have no idea why. And I just can't do this anymore because I am prepared for and thinking about and fueling for a leisurely stroll in the woods. And yet I am running a marathon at sprinter's pace. And that's what it feels like to not move anger through your body. And that's why often we see people in burnout having issues with suppression, repression, or expression of anger. Because this is not what the body is meant to do with an emotion. It's meant to move it through. And so that can happen. We can experience the anger for many, many reasons. But one of the things that I tell people this all the time in the burnout coaching world, when people come to me and they're like, I'm not burnt out because I only work like 20 hours a week. And also they've got, many other things going on in their life, but they're like, I can't be burnt out. I'm only working 20 hours a week. So I hate my job. So I don't really like my colleagues. So I'm like really concerned that I'm working for something that doesn't align with my values, but it's only 20 hours a week. Man, you can burn out on 2 hours a week if you're doing something that doesn't fill your soul and feed your soul. 100%. And that's the same thing with anger. Like it's going to produce some anger and probably a lot of it. And so if you're living in that soup for a long time, your body in burnout is really, it's just a biological expression of too much. It's an incredibly normal set of physiological reactions to overwhelm, to stress, to too much, which is one of the key things we talk about in burnout coaching is to normalize it of like, your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. There's nothing wrong. And there's ways to get out of it. But one of the ways we got to get out of it is by saying like, where is your energy going that you don't want it to go to? Do you want to put your energy into suppressing and repressing anger? Okay, maybe that's a different conversation. But if not, let's talk about how to move that through your body in a way that honors the pain that you're legitimately feeling, but doesn't put it on somebody else and doesn't put it into your tissues where it doesn't belong.
Yeah. No, that was a really good explanation. And I think it goes back to what you were saying before, is using it as a point of discovery, using it to like as a point of like curiosity, like why is this here? What is it telling me? Like a messenger, like what is it telling me? Is rather than, because I think that the other thing we can experience is we end up compounding the emotion we feel. Like we're talking about anger here, but we compound with other things because then we're annoyed that we're angry, or we're frustrated that we're angry, or we feel shame because we're angry. And then it's just like 12 layers deep of compounded emotions. And then we can't get down to the original one we were trying to feel. So I love that, just using it as like a messenger. Like, what is it trying to tell me? Like, what message is here for me? We've talked about IFS, internal family systems, on the show before, and kind of to that point where it's like, yeah, like let's have a conversation with that anger, like, and see what is it trying to tell me? What does it need to say? What is, what needs to be heard?
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of us sort of think about, okay, let's have the conversation with anger. And it looks like venting to the group text.
Yeah.
Being like, this be like, and everyone's like, yeah. And then like ask yourself, how do you feel after that?
Yeah.
Like, There is a myth that we need to vent.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. But if what's happening is you're just expressing it out, like all that fire is coming out at other people, even if they're your friends, and then they're just like gassing you up, that's not really helping you see what's underneath it for you. And there's a message underneath it. So some of the things that work a little better than that are like, please, yes, pull on your trusted friends to be like, hey, do you have a minute? Like, I'm really, really overwhelmed right now. And this thing is really bringing out some hard feelings in me. Can I sort this through with you? And like recruit people to help you see your blind spots, because for sure, when you are in anger, one of the first things to go is noticing your own blind spots, because you just you're seeing red. And so what we teach people to do is a couple of things. One, it's just really to notice it in your body, because it's going to come first through your body. So people feel in the stomach, the jaws, like if you have TMJ, teeth grinding, especially like the occipital bones, if it feels really good to rub back here, right in your traps, there might be some stuck anger there. So noticing it when it comes into your body, like shoulders are hunched, that kind of thing. And then being able to say, okay, it's here. What do I need? What do I need to do? And sometimes in dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is the adapt for coaching, sometimes one of the most helpful things when you really are overwhelmed, there's something called TIP, which is what happened, some of the practices that DBT will offer for people who are in like extreme emotional states. So T is for temperature, just like ice, just to get you into your prefrontal cortex, ice on your face, or even hot. I is this sense of like intense exercise. I mean, it's 10 push-ups, or it's just like, sometimes it's just squeezing your palms together, just like get something going. Paced breathing, and then progressive muscle relaxation, tense and relax. Just a little bit of that can get you back into your thinking brain, so you can do things like offer yourself self-compassion. And that is a science-backed, no BS. Like, this is not just like cute and cozy, science-backed way to help you learn and grow and just feel better. And actually, like for high-achieving women who are like, I don't have time to lose my edge with the self-compassion nonsense. I promise you, if you want to go far, fast, and stay there and not burn out, self-compassion is going to be your best friend. It will get you so much further than that inner critic who is just like beating you up. And in 3 years, you're going to be like, I'm burnt out. If you stay with self-compassion, you're going to stay in the game. So we do self-compassion, we do RAIN, recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture. We do a couple of other things like that. Even just like, yes, being able to move anger through your body with the traditional punching a pillow, or with portrayal, like being able to like, sometimes you really got to act it out of like, you know what, this is what I want to tell them, and just like let it be. When we're able to do that, we can let anger move through our body without having it be expressed to someone, but also not having it like live in our tissues, in your jaw, for instance.
Yeah, those are great
helpful
practices. Yeah, no, it was. Those are great. I mean, yeah, I think sometimes I find, maybe I just need to scream into a pillow. Like, that is such a good release for me. Like, that maybe that's all it takes. But I love what you were saying about, venting is one thing, but I think it's like that concept of like talking about your emotions versus being with them. And we're having a conversation. Like, yeah, we could talk about them all day, and talk therapy has its place, but at some point we also need to be with them and ask them what they're asking of us, and what, why they're there, and to be able to ask questions. And then I think there's also that somatic piece where, like you're saying, we don't want it to be stuck in our body and stuck in our tissues. Like, we got to do what we need to do to get it out and move it out. But the other thing I love that you brought up about burnout is, because I've heard this so many times with them. I've worked with a lot of women that are in the thick of burnout or have dealt with burnout, but so many people think that it is about the amount of work. Because I like you said, where you had to be like, oh no, I only work 20 hours a week, I can't be burned out, I'm not working that much. But it has nothing to do with the amount of work that you're doing. Like, it literally has nothing to do with the amount. It's the amount, because I sometimes feel like the anger that we feel sometimes in this, it's like our soul trying to get our attention. Like, our soul is angry. It's like, what are you doing? Like, this is not what you're here to be doing. It's not about how much you're doing. It's the misalignment.
Yeah. It's a great point. And yeah, I said earlier, anger can be a secondary emotion. The flip is true too, that anger can actually be a primary emotion that we're seeing expressed through sadness, for instance. So this often happens for women. And I'll talk about a little bit gender differences about how anger can be held and expressed in men versus women. But what I often see, and it's sort of like part of my diagnostic with folks, is for people for whom it was much safer. Like, think about a little kid, think about a little girl. Sometimes we are socialized to believe that we can only get help when we're crying, not when we're raging. And so no matter what you're feeling, if you cry, you get help. And people are tender with you. They're gentle. They care for you. And so as adults, then you like your waterworks all the time. And you're like, I don't know why I'm crying. Well, because your nervous system has developed to say like, this is the only safe way to express this emotion. And so as much as anger can be a cover for other things, some things can be covers for anger. And so when I talk with folks who like, it's just like, I can't stop crying. Okay, let's like explore bigger. What was it like for you as a kid to have feelings? And if we find that there might be challenging relationships to anger, then we'll start to look at like, well, what's happening right now for you that might not be aligned for you, that you might be spending energy trying to make it make sense rather than shift your life so that you don't have to be doing that as much anymore. And in terms of the experience of like, oh man, it doesn't take hours to make burnout come on. It just takes a mixed match of values. That's exactly what's happening for many folks of like, oh, they're just so sad, or they're just like, it's coming out as just like lethargy. These can all be covers for anger.
That's so good. That's really telling. I think that's going to give people a lot of light bulb moments right there, because I think there's a lot of hidden stuff there. I do have a couple more questions I want to ask you, as I want to keep this. And this is such a good conversation. And yes, like too much is going to be too much. One thing I do want to ask before I ask you the last question that I ask everybody, and you've given a lot of really great tips here, but so maybe it might just be picking out some we've already talked about, but what would you say for someone who they're listening to this and they're like, check, like this is me, like this is what I'm experiencing. What would be some of the first, 2 or 3 things you would tell them to do to help be able to start working through this and processing this within themselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all is like, congratulate yourself for even being able to recognize and admit. Because for a lot of folks, even if it's like blindingly obviously true, maybe to other people, or even to them, there's a lot of incentive to say that's not me, because we have so many shameful narratives around women and anger. So if this is you and it does feel safe enough to say like, this is me, then the next step I would do is to start to notice where in your body are you feeling it. As soon as you feel it, to be able to start to say, and actually even before you feel it, to be able to shift the narratives in what I call your sober moments of non-anger, of just to say, I'm going to feel anger, or I'm going to feel sadness that I can't stop crying or something. And I'm going to say, this is a normal response to being a human. This is a normal part of the human response. And just to be able to say, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't have to be shameful about having emotions. And then to shifting into some self-compassion. And Dr. Kristen Neff does a wonderful job of laying out these steps. So these are not mine, but I teach them and they work well for folks. It's 3 steps. The self-compassion formula. The first thing is just noticing where you're feeling it in your body, because emotions start in your body. The second is common humanity. I am not the only one who's ever felt like this. This makes sense. I am part of the human condition. And third, and this is the hardest part, it's to offer yourself some self-kindness. And that looks like, yeah, it makes sense that I'm feeling anger. I have been the default parent and an entrepreneur, and I'm, organizing care for my elderly mom. And whatever it is for you, it makes sense that I'm overwhelmed. I might be snappy. I might have limited resources, and like, oops, I yelled at that person I shouldn't have. And that person might have been my child. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not a bad person. I am not a bad person. I am a human. And just to be able to say, it's okay. And you take a deep breath and you move on. And when I say move on, I mean move into what is the information I need to take from this. It might take you a little while to get there. Queuing up this 3-part self-compassion system takes practice. It feels awkward. It feels like, for a lot of people, they're like, no. Just try it. Just experiment. Just try it. When you're in that space of regulated, like self-loving space, you're able to grow, learn, and see. Like, if you don't like that expression of anger, if that didn't feel good and you want to change it, the best soil for change is the soil in self-compassion. And that's just science. So if we're able to get us over there, you can change that behavior faster and it'll last longer than if you're inner critiquing yourself. Like, what about a good person doesn't feel anger, doesn't express anger? Nah, we all do it. Just do it differently next time. Which means something like taking a deep breath and pausing and recognizing like, okay, you know what? I got to step out. I need some ice on my face. I need to do 10 push-ups and then I can come back to this conversation. And that's what a cycle might look like in the beginning for folks. That's what we experiment with.
Those are so good. I love all of those. So y'all should be taking notes on those, because I feel like those are things that we can all be doing. Thank you for sharing those. And I do have one more question I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody as we wrap up. But can you let everybody know where they can find out more about you, if they're interested in working with you, if they're looking for somebody to help them with things like this, working through these emotions, working through burnout, all of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is the website So kimpaull.com with 2 L's, KIMPAULL.com. You can find everything you need to know there. Other places you can find me are on Instagram at kimpaull_coaching. And those are a great place to start. So those two, I'd start there.
Perfect. Of course, I'll have links to those in the show notes so y'all can go give Kim a follow and check out everything that she's doing. And Kim, the last question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Oh my goodness. I have to say, my experience with this is to be as present with my own needs and self-compassion. I mean, it's been a big part of my journey as possible. And that often means taking some big, deep breaths just to get to the truth. I mean, I talk about this stuff, this anger, this burnout stuff, because I've lived it. And I am the repression subconscious person. I've had to come to my purpose by undoing some of these stories that live so deep in my body. And really the only way I've been able to do it, like start that path, is to get in my body. And the first way I get into my body is frequent meditation, breathing, and noticing feelings in my body, which sounds so simple, but like, that's where it all starts. So I would say, like, if you want to be on the path to purpose, start with getting into your body. And my portal has been my breath.
And it does sound simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. So I think that is a challenge for a lot of people. Such good tips. Thank you for sharing that. I love that answer. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I talk about this so much about getting into the body. So I totally agree with you there. And thank you for this really unique conversation around anger. I think this is a conversation that's so needed. And this is an emotion that can be really confusing for people, has a lot of baggage around it. So I think that this is really going to help people be able to learn more about their own emotions and work through these things. So thank you so much for sharing all of this, all your wisdom and insight.
Thank you for the work you do, Hope. It's a really, really powerful podcast that you put out there. And as I said, I've been listening to it all summer. Getting excited for this, and I'm happy to be on it. Okay.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay.